We made it to the end of Superman, the animated series, with a pretty darn good two-parter. To see what I think of this episode, stay tuned. Hello, friends. Welcome back to the show. So glad to see all of your returning faces. And if you're new here, thank you for stopping by. I think that you're going to like this show because this is where we talk about cartoons that we grew up on the 80s and 90s. So if you come from my generation, you're going to enjoy this. So hop below, hit the subscribe button, click the like button while you're at it, because we're jumping into the last two-part episode. Well, last two episodes. It's a two-parter one of Superman the Animated Series Legacy, which originally aired February 5th and 6th, 2000, which doesn't sound that long ago until you realize that's already 19 years ago. 19 and a half, I guess, almost. Anyway, we're talking about that today.
Thank you, Father. As you say.
Well, here we are, the last episode of the third and final season of Superman the Animated Series. Like I mentioned in the last video, if you haven't seen that, you can click up here in the Demon Reborn, is that some websites list that episode and these two-parters as the only 3 episodes in the 4th season. IMDb says otherwise, so I've been going off of that. But this is much later. I mean, that episode was in September. Here we are now in February when these aired. But again, at this point, the Justice League was underway, so I'm sure their attention was pulled in that. But this, I thought, was a great way to wrap up the series and wrap up some of the story arcs and bring conclusion to Superman the Animated Series. But we'll talk all about that right after our 90-second Brainiac Bomb. I'm going to give myself 90 seconds because this is a two-parter. I doubt that I'll be able to get through it anyway, but it's worth a shot. So I'll give you a complete synopsis of the episode before this bomb blows off, which it really can't talk. Before this bomb blows up, which it probably will. Here we go. A world is being conquered by a bunch of parademons and a general leader. We go back to Apocalypse, find out that general leader takes off his helmet, and it's Kal-El, who is being called son by Darkseid. And he goes, because of your great work, I'm going to give you Earth to conquer. And then he starts having this bad dream of all these images of people on Earth that he once knew. And then Granny Goodness is brainwashing him to say, oh no, you've always been here. We found you and all that. He goes to Earth and tries to conquer them. And Supergirl is previously to this was trying to pretend that she was Superman to try to keep people wondering where he was at. He goes in, big war outbreak, and Supergirl tries to stop him. He gets shot by this missile from Lex Luthor with kryptonite. They think that they killed both of them. And then we go to part 2. He's captured in this red light room, and he has his flashbacks of his life that he once had and gets his memory back. And Lois breaks in there to try to free him, and he gets out eventually, and he decides that he's going to go take on Darkseid to prove to him that to Earth that he's a good guy again. He goes back to Apocalypse, and he fights Darkseid and challenges, and then finally is able to break him down and stop him and weaken him. He throws him to his own people, and his own people, his slaves, start to carry him off and go, they're there, master, we'll take care of you. And then he goes to Lois, and he says, boy, how am I ever going to win back the trust of Earth? And she goes, well, one person at a time. Oh, I was right there. The words. I didn't think I was going to do it. Two-parter, 90 seconds. That's pretty dang close, you have to admit.
What's happened to you?
They have this set, and the air dates were back to back, but it really feels like a movie. This is another one of those two-parters that you can tell they really spent some time on, and it's paced really well. There's so much crammed into the second part of this episode especially that is just a lot of story, very fulfilling to watch, and it doesn't feel like it drags in any parts. It doesn't feel like they're trying to milk more story out of it. And I think it's an appropriate story to tell, especially for the conclusion of the season and the series. Just on the surface, one of the arcs that we've dealt with story-wise throughout this has been Darkseid and Apocalypse and those stories, but also it gets into another element of kind of setting up a future for Superman and raises some questions with that. And I'll get into more detail on that later. But the way this episode starts out with this kind of intergalactic war that's going on. And one of the things that struck me about that scene is only struck me as unusual because you don't see it very often in these older cartoons, is subtitles. These alien creatures are speaking another language, which obviously they would, and they're providing us subtitles. But I think all too often in older cartoons is they kind of glaze over that and just have everybody speaking English because it's a lot easier to do that. And then also just the setup of the mystery, to see the reveal of it being Kal-El, Superman, that is this general that is taking over this planet, and to have Darkseid calling him son and establishing that relationship there is just a great mystery of what's going on. You know, one of the things that we've talked about in this series is Superman needing a adversary to challenge him, and it seems like we're always trying to throw a bigger physical threat at him. And I think some of the most successful episodes are where there's more of a psychological battle, or where it takes more brain power, or a more of a battle of will, something along those lines. And this one is very interesting because we take Darkseid and grinding goodness to brainwash Superman. Now imagine what you could do with Superman if he thought he was loyal to somebody else or loyal to a different cause. And that's really the story that's explored in this, which I think is just incredibly fascinating.
Granny's going to flush those nasty old cobwebs right out of your head.
And then we go to Earth and we see Supergirl controlling these Superman robots throughout the metropolis, and a Clark Kent robot with Lois to try to keep the ruse going so that people don't start asking questions of where Superman went. Just a very sci-fi sort of thing. They don't really explain where they got these robots or how they were created. I suspect Batman's behind that. It's a little weird too, because I feel like they could have just as easily with Supergirl there to go, oh, Superman's out of town on business or out of the planet on business. And so Supergirl's here and she's going to protect the planet for you. But she finally gets to fill in for Superman, and she literally has to fill in as Superman controlling these robots.
Hey, knock it off, you greedy pig.
And I like that we have to set up a way for Darkseid to be conquering Earth, and he still has the vendetta against Earth, but still honoring what the new gods had bestowed upon him to go, you are now no longer allowed to interfere with Earth. So this whole plot is created for the purpose of him getting back at Earth, but still honoring his agreement to not go to Earth himself, which I think is a great solution to that story problem, which makes it more interesting rather than him just breaking the rules and going, forget it, I'm going to go to Earth anyway and wreck a bunch of buildings. He sends Superman to do that. And with that comes setting up this interesting idea that Superman is an all-powerful being that is on Earth and is great when he's on our side, but when he's against us, it's bad news bears.
You wear my shield but stand against me?
Which again sets up another interesting dynamic to have Luthor, who has been saying all along, what if Superman goes bad and wants to blast us into smithereens? We got to have some precautions. And that's exactly what happens. Now Luthor is the guy that we all turn to and say, help us, save us. How do we do this? And he's got the weapons ready to go. So the very thing that we've been upset with Luthor for, or fighting Luthor against, is now the very thing that saves Earth, because Superman is going rogue and is destroying the planet or conquering the planet. So that sets up another interesting dynamic, which incidentally, they could also brought Batman into the mix on this, because Batman also doesn't quite fully trust Superman for that same reason, that what if he goes bad? What if somebody else gets to him? What if somebody is able to use him against us? And that's exactly what this story is, which I think is a fascinating storyline to deal with Superman that we haven't really dealt with much in great detail in the series up until now.
I don't know what twist of fate caused this change, but Superman's handed us the perfect opportunity to destroy him.
And then at the end of the episode, Superman dies. So, good show, everybody. Oh, you're still here. You knew there was a second part. But no, it's a great cliffhanger to actually end the episode on Superman's dead. As far as we know, he got shot by this kryptonite bomb and potentially killed him and Supergirl.
No way he could have survived that.
I think that's one of the signs of a good two-part episode is if they can kind of stand on their own, because this is 2 episodes and not a movie. And I think this one does. Obviously, it very much leads into the next episode and has that cliffhanger that you want to see more. But it's a full, filled-out episode. We get to see Superman as a villain or as a bad guy that is conquering Earth, and Earth trying to go up against Superman, which is something they hadn't had to do up until now. And Luthor sort of as the hero or the good guy in this scenario. And then them actually being able to use Luthor's weapon to stop Superman. Now what?
Oh my God.
One issue I have with the beginning of the second episode is we have Superman get his memories back just in sort of this flashback sequence, and all of a sudden, oh, okay, I know who I am now, and I know that I'm not supposed to be conquering Earth, and I'm not really Darkseid's son, which there's so much crammed into this second episode that it almost seemed like a necessity that they had to kind of condense that. How does he get his memories back? And that he survived this blast and now he's connecting all the dots. But it did feel like kind of a cheap way out of him coming to his senses. I guess they could kind of had already set that up in the first episode when Granny Goodness had to wipe his memory after the dreams, but it did seem kind of like a cheap way out of getting through that exposition.
First you declare all-out war on Earth, and now that you've lost, you'd like us to believe an alien despot was controlling your mind.
Now we see the world turn to Luthor for answers, and Luthor uses that power, which he would in that situation to, I think everybody treated him as a hero that, okay, we stopped Superman. That's what we wanted. And now that he's got a little influence and he's got the ears of everybody else involved, that he goes, okay, well, then here's what we need to do. We need to put a permanent stop to him. And I think even Luthor, in the back of his mind, he's a smart guy, knows something's not right. Why is Superman all of a sudden turned against us? And he's been kind of beating that drum for a long time. But now that it's actually happened, I feel like he knows that something's up. But he goes, well, before my cover's blown, let's just end him. Let's end Superman altogether. And that's a very Luthor thing to do.
There's only one permanent solution.
And of course, that leads to Lois getting an opportunity to save Superman for a change. I know it's happened a couple other times, but this was a distinctive part where I felt like Superman needed somebody else to step in. He was fighting, he was holding his own, but he certainly didn't have his super strength because he was in the red sun room. And so Lois, really good thing she showed up, or else they could have got the better of Superman.
Have you ever tried to get a story out of the military?
And I like that they really dealt with the idea of this paradigm shift of everybody kind of not trusting Superman all of a sudden. And even with Dr. Hamilton, that when Superman kind of jacks him up against the wall, that he saw the fear in his face. And it wasn't like we glazed over that idea that Superman goes rogue, kills a bunch of, or is trying to kill a bunch of people and conquer the Earth, and goes, oh, never mind, I'm back now, I'm okay. Somebody was messing with my brain, and then all of a sudden everybody's back on his side. Lois still sees the truth in him and knows that she can trust him and knows something else is up, but not everybody is that quick to forgive. And I think that's a real human emotion, especially with a powerful person as Superman, to go, wait, I'm a little on guard now. Why did that happen so easily? You were gone for a month, now you come back, and now you're conquering us. I want to trust you, but I'm going to have to earn it back a little bit. And that's obviously the theme of this last part of the episode, which I thought was a really solid story to kind of deal with and established well.
Did you see the look on Hamilton's face? He'll never trust me again.
And because of that, it really kind of fuels Superman's anger. And that's another emotion that we haven't really seen much from Superman, is really getting upset about this and going to seek revenge, which is not a characteristic that we see in Superman. So I think these two-parters, we cram a lot in because, one, the story is really solid and really fleshed out, but also because we kind of dealing with a lot of different themes and a lot of different emotions, and it just adds a lot of energy and flavor to this episode. And of course, he goes to Darkseid and they battle, which is a great battle between these two superpowers. I do like that they bring up Dan Turpin in that final battle between Darkseid and Superman, that he gives him a good one for Dan Turpin.
That's for Dan Turpin.
And this battle is really pretty brutal. I mean, it really is toe-to-toe, Superman and Darkseid going toe-to-toe. And it's a brutal battle, very strong, very forceful, and you can just feel the power between these two. And actually, to be able to bring Darkseid down on his knees is a pretty epic scene. And then finally, to see Superman lift Darkseid up over his head and is just such a striking image, because Superman's clothes are all tattered and worn, and seeing Darkseid kind of crumbled under the power and tossing Darkseid over the edge to his subjects below. This last moment in the episode kind of really illustrates that kind of duality. Here we have Darkseid, who is a ruthless tyrant and horrible leader and treats his people horribly, and they're still loyal to him no matter what. Even when they see him weak and seeing them supposedly being freed by Superman, they're still loyal to him, blindly loyal, because they see him as a god. And Superman, who is dealing with this idea on Earth, where he doesn't want to be a god, he just wants people to trust him and to like him, and because of a rather bad deed that he did by trying to conquer them, everybody on Earth is a little bit more apprehensive of this and doesn't just blindly follow him, as the subjects of Darkseid, who were treated badly through their whole lives perceivably, are blindly loyal to Darkseid. So what a neat duality that we get to see in that moment. And of course, Lois encouraging Superman and always seeing the good in him, that we just take it one person at a time. And what a great theme for the episode.
If I can't trust myself, how can I win back the trust of an entire planet?
So when it comes time to rank this episode, or episodes, two-parter, it's a really solid story. There is so much that's crammed into 2 episodes. And I've said it before, but really when you take 2 half-hour episodes, you take the commercials out and you take the credits and the titles, you're talking 40 minutes or so. There's a lot of story in this, and it could easily be a 90-minute movie in itself, but it doesn't feel like it lags and doesn't stall. But I think more so than any of that, it's got great action, got great visuals, but is the themes that they're able to introduce into this story. And I think it just made this episode stand out greatly, because it dealt with some really pretty powerful themes, and many of them, and many different emotions. So as I look at my list and figure out where to rank this, it was a pretty easy decision to decide that this episode is the new number 1 episode of my favorite episodes of the series, for a couple of different reasons. And one, everything that I've said in this episode so far, the themes that they deal with, the story that they deal with, the fact that they could get this all into one episode is pretty powerful. But I think one of the overwhelming reasons that I place this episode above World's Finest, because this is strictly a Superman episode. This doesn't need Batman to elevate it. As much as a fan of Batman as I am, I think this is the episode that I've been looking for this entire series. This is Superman for what he really is. And I think the themes that they deal with in this belong to Superman alone. We got Superman battling Darkseid, good versus evil, and Superman's morals and truth and justice in the American way, as they've said, is the factor that's in question here. When he is turned against Earth by not his own doing, but by being brainwashed, that now the very thing that he has built his relationship with Earth and Metropolis on, trust, is in peril, and he has to earn that back. And so we get to see that struggle and that emotion and that element, and that being the adversary of this story, or that being the antagonist, rather than just a big creature or a big thing or something questionably more powerful than Superman to have to fight. But it all coming down to Superman struggling with that emotional rejection of Earth, turning against him, not turning against him, but losing their faith in him. That's the story. And I think that makes this story stand way above any of the other episodes that we've seen. I think more so than anything else, this is the episode that belonged to Superman. This wasn't an episode that could have been told with Batman, because it deals with emotions and elements that are unique to Superman and his character. So that's why this one belongs in the #1 spot of my favorite episodes of the series. I can say that definitively now because there's no more episodes. So let me know, do you agree with me that this is the best episode of the series? I know not all of you will, and of course this is simply just my opinion. You all are absolutely entitled to have your own opinion, but please share it with me in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this episode, please click the like button. If you want to see more episodes like this, just hit subscribe. I have new episodes on their way. But next up on the channel here, I'm going to be doing kind of a recap of Superman, the animated series, now that we've finished the 3rd and final season. And then also giving you a little bit of information about what's coming up next for me on this channel and what to expect. So be sure to keep an eye out for that. As always, thank you so much for watching. I'm Andy Knode. I'll see you soon.